After the Nashville shooting, of course, where 3 children's lives were taken and 3 staff members.
And we still don't have the manifesto.
No, because it would look too damning to trans ideology, I would assume. The rhetoric about the conspiracy theory that there is a trans genocide being waged against the transgender community, whatever that constituency is, has continued to escalate. And there have been calls for trans people to form armed militias. And as we can see, I think this was about a week and a half ago now, where Posey, Kelly J. Keane, did another one of her Let Women Speak events in Hyde Park. And some mad bloke, if you scroll down, please, John, there's an image of the banner in here that we need to show. Just keep going, please. There we go. A banner saying arm trans kids with a Fisher-Price car and house kitted out with artillery guns and a Gatling gun and dynamite.
That's just mental.
Yeah, and Nebula from Guardians of the Galaxy holding up the sign, apparently.
Right.
Trans rights demonstrators promptly displayed the sign, saying, "Trans joy will outlive you all." One banner held by protesters who obscured their faces with umbrellas.
They're arguing here that the kids will shoot their own parents.
So, unfortunately, maybe some UK charities, as we'll get onto later.
Right.
One other sign said, "Turfs on our turf, defending trans lives." So they're implying that the existence of trans exclusionary feminists warrants an armed counter-revolution.
Well, they have been saying essentially these things for a long time now.
Yeah, so when I went over the reason, on the day after the tragic shooting, the reason that trans and other leftist terrorism will continue, I went through the logic of the likes of Rosa Luxemburg from the 20th century, early 20th century, where they were Marxist terrorists, and they said that, no, our version of Marxism is non-violent. However, because we live in a bourgeois superstructure, which is always infringing upon the equitable wealth of the proletariat, we have to defend ourselves of violent revolution. We don't want to, but you've given us no choice because, of course, through labour, you've robbed us of our wealth. And so just the bloody revolution is just self-defence. And that's the same logic here.
Yeah.
It's the fact of you're not giving us hormones, surgery at all ages. You're not affirming trans kids.
Constant affirmation is what they...
Yeah, so by virtue of you not doing that, you're actually assaulting us, and therefore we are justified in shooting you. That is their logic. It's horrible logic. They should be incarcerated for it. But it's just one fringe lunatic group pushing this, right? No.
If only.
Yeah, no, there's a whole activist network embedded in Britain's charity sector, and that includes Childline. So we're going to go through some of that today. And what first brought my attention to this story was I stumbled across on Twitter this thread. And this is not one isolated thread on the Childline forum. So Childline runs a series of forums which allows other users, which are not age verified, by the way.
Right.
So this is not just children. They're meant to be moderated. But as we'll get onto later, many of these threads have had no moderators stepping in. This allows children to discuss contentious issues, and there's a whole gender identity thread. And one of these posts, this is what drew my attention to it, was, "I'm worried about a transgender genocide." And so the post here, please scroll down to the actual post, John, says, "Hello all, I want to talk to you today about my worries of a complete genocide of transgender people in the UK and USA. Europe excluded, apparently. Many of you will probably know about the Conservative leadership election currently going on. Well, a couple of weeks ago, newspaper outlet New Statesman published an article saying how the candidates were right to discuss the trans question. This reminds me of the Jewish question, which the Nazis tried to answer by killing around 6 million European Jews. I think they're skipping over a little bit of history in the timeline of events there, but okay. Indictment of our education system, I suppose. This language should scare trans people and allies. Why would you need allies if you weren't fighting a war? Meanwhile, in America, some are calling for the killing of doctors who treat trans kids."
Some. Just some are calling. Well, I mean, who?
1, vague. 2, that is a oversimplification of the argument from some Republicans who would say that if you mutilate a child or molest them, you should get the death penalty. As Ron DeSantis recently gave the death penalty to child sex offenders, and they said the LGBTQ community are most affected. As you said, what an odd thing to say. I am not comparing the views of some odd folks to the Nazis, but the parallels are definitely there. So you are.
You are, then.
Yeah. Athletes are being banned and ostracised from sporting events just because of their identity. I am worried you should be too.
No, that's absolutely true. People are ostracised from sporting events because of their identity. Men are ostracised from women's sports because they're men. That's an identity. That is true. Totally true and justified.
But they're comparing Fallon Fox, who has fractured the orbital socket of a woman, to Jesse Owens, who was the black runner that beat the Nazis at the Berlin Olympics. Stunning and brave. Now, again, why is this allowed up without any moderation on a children's forum? Because this is crackpot conspiratorial nonsense. And I would understand if a child posted this because they've been manipulated by the media and someone stepped in to allay their concerns. Because, of course, there are loads of kids, whether it's in school or online or left to their own devices, that have been manipulated into this cult-like ideology. But nobody steps in to correct this. Instead, there are about 10 comments underneath it which continually affirm it. You can just take a scroll down, John, so people that are looking at the video content can have a look for themselves. Again, no moderation here. And this is...
Go back up to the first one under it. The next one down. Oh God, what the hell is wrong with people? So I'm going to die because I want top surgery and I'm demi-fluid? No one's going to murder you. The state is not going to put you in a concentration camp and put you in a gas chamber.
But they're all going to mutilate you.
Yeah, they'll probably give you the mutilation you're asking for.
That's the sad thing. They're not going to kill you. They're just going to irreversibly damage.
That's queer kid envy. I mean, this is just...
But this is also the thing as well. If you notice here, there are no profile photos, which is a good thing on a children's forum.
Sure.
There is no verification system upon sign-up. So what's stopping any of these people, including the original poster, to be an adult to try and find vulnerable children?
Yeah.
There's nothing. There's no safeguarding here whatsoever from Childline. And so I went down a bit of a rabbit hole looking at someone else's work on this. And we'll get onto him in a moment because he's a friend of the show, actually. But Childline's run by the NSPCC, and so I thought we'd look at their guidelines on gender identity. And they said in 2022 to 2023, Childline delivered almost 3,400 sessions about sexuality and gender identity. Those are counselling sessions.
Yeah.
We'll see what they might have told the kids to do as we go on. Common themes for children contacting Childline with questions about their gender identity are anxiety about their feelings, fear of not being accepted, lack of available support, and the time it takes for them to access support services. By support services, they mean gender-affirming care.
Yeah.
As in...
Tavistock.
Yes. In their section on gender identity, it actually ranks these identities to try and explain them to children. It puts cisgender at the bottom. So despite the proportion of the population being trans or non-binary, identifying that way, rather, is being very small.
99.7 or something percent are cisgender.
Yes, so it gives it as the lowest priority option. So it, again, not only normalizes it prioritizes it as possibly the reason why you might be feeling alienated from your body at time of puberty, or if you have any other life or mental comorbidities going on which may compound your personal distress. In their advice for parents section, you may be worried about a child you know who's being bullied because of their sexuality or gender identity, or who's experiencing abuse at home. We also know that LGBTQ plus young people are more at risk of grooming and child sexual exploitation. What an odd thing to say. Who might that be by?
No idea.
Would it be by anyone on the Childline forums? I would hope not, but you haven't got any protections in place. And so let's go on to Childline's specific gender identity guidance page. They say, there's no right or wrong way to express your gender identity.
Disagree.
And it's okay to change how you express your gender over time. The permanent fluctuating identity of a whole class of insecure children that look to an authority figure for guidance. These are very easily manipulated and aggrieved people. And they can be easily exploited by someone in a position of relative power over them, whether that's a teacher, whether it's a politician, whether it's a social media influencer, or whether it's an adult with untoward intentions. Again, most at risk of grooming. Very worrying. There are lots of ways to express your gender with your appearance. If you're not sure where you should start, you should try by changing or cutting your hair, or wearing more gender-neutral clothes. Some people want to use binders, gaffs, or packers to hide feminine or masculine parts of themselves. It's important to remember these can sometimes be uncomfortable or dangerous, and you should speak to a doctor before using them. Promoting chest binders, which have broken the ribs of girls and caused such tissue scarring, it's developed into breast cancer.
But it completely accepts the premise that there's something wrong with the child's body.
Yes.
That's the problem with the binder. Like, it's obviously, an accident or whatever, someone using it wrong, people will be like, well, that's not the intent. Okay, fine. I agree. But in every case of recommending binders, you've accepted the premise that the child who is going through puberty, their body is actually wrong, as they believe it mistakenly to be, and what child doesn't? when they're when they're very in their early teens and they're going through puberty, what child doesn't have really weird concerns about their body? Like, oh God, I feel, and it's like, no, you are right. There is something wrong with you. Put this chest binder on.
Yeah,
it's totally wrong.
So when I was about 16, I wrongly thought I was overweight. I was in no way overweight, and I starved myself down to about 6 stone.
Yeah.
Like, if I was offered liposuction for that, I would never forgive someone who would turn me into a skeleton. And so you shouldn't allow girls to irreversibly mutilate their body on the premise that if you augment your external appendages, you'll feel better inside. It's like, no,
it's totally wrong.
The interior experience is what's causing the distress. And overlooking those factors is doing a disservice to these children and putting them in the crosshairs of adults with untoward intentions. So if we go to the next one, Childline also have decided to put out videos talking about asexuality, demisexuality. So they're talking to trans influencers, and it's in a very conversational, laid-back setting where they're just sitting in armchairs, having a chat. Do you know what demisexual is by any chance?
Yeah, it's someone who feels sexual some of the time and not other parts of the time.
No, so demisexual.
Oh, that's something else then.
Yeah, you've got totally wrong flag. It's very
How
offensive.
could I know?
Demisexual is someone who only wants to have sex with people they have an emotional connection to.
Being normal.
So women.
Yeah, but also most men feel that way, really.
Yeah.
Like most men would, given the choice. I mean, okay, fair enough. They probably would have sex.
We've had a couple of mistakes in our lives, I'm sure. But however, most people would. That's a healthy relationship, I would suggest.
But that's just essentially being a normal woman. You are right.
Yeah. So we finally answered the question: what is a woman? Demisexual.
Yeah.
Great. Thanks, Childline. And I brought this up because. So we're going to go on to James Esses' work very, very shortly. One of the things was also drawn my attention to was Childline's guidance on what to do if your parents aren't trans affirming. And this is the current article that's up. And I say current because they went back and changed it. So, what to do if your loved ones don't accept your gender identity? Point 5 says, set boundaries with people who refuse to accept your gender identity. As painful as it may be, it's important to emotionally distance yourself from people who refuse to acknowledge who you are. Remember that their behaviour is not your fault, and it's not your responsibility to change so that they can feel more comfortable. If you want to, explain why you need space. Perhaps someday they will realise their mistake and you will reinstate the relationship you once had with them. When they talk about grooming, one of the first steps is to distance yourself from your parents.
Right. Obviously atrocious.
Yes.
Right. Can we go back to that previous one just quickly? You see where it's asexual, grey sexual, demisexual? Well, the definition I gave was grey sexual.
Right.
So I looked at the Wikipedia page. A grey sexual person is someone who experiences sexual attraction on occasion. So that's totally normal. You're not sexually attracted to everything around you. You only occasionally are sexually attracted to individual people. Sometimes.
Really?
It's totally normal.
Why else do you think I work here, Carl?
Yeah, exactly. But that's the point, though, isn't it? Like they need a crazy term for what is the normal human. Like there is zero people who are not grey sexual.
They need to pathologize you into atomized constituencies because you're easier to control that way.
But it's
just,
just
if you're a child.
If you don't have like a named identity for this, then it doesn't exist. I know it's just the normal state of being.
Yeah.
Sorry,
so
Karen.
it's all right if we can go back to that Childline one. So just to pick out the headline again. Number 5, set boundaries with people who refuse to accept your gender identity. Now, that means emotionally distance and cut them out of your life.
Yeah.
This reminds me of the drag pedagogy paper that I've been over time and time again that says you can embrace a new glitter family who are more affirming and disrupt the reproductive futurity of the nuclear family. Most pernicious stuff ever.
Anything that tries to break up a nuclear family is evil.
Well, they tried it even harder in the archive version because they went back and changed it when people noticed. If we can go to this next one. Number 5 originally said, create distance from people who refuse to accept your gender identity. They're deliberately crowbarring children away from their parents. Yep. This is Childline, who is meant to be acting in their interest. Okay, so I spoke about James Esses, and he's been doing a deep dive because he actually used to work for Childline. He volunteered for about 5 years, thousands of hours of counselling. I believe he was a former barrister who went on to tried to become a psychotherapist, was kicked off his course. You can go to his Spectator article, please, John. He's examined lots more of these threads than just I did. He also spoke to Andrew Doyle about this on Sunday, this past Sunday, June the 4th. On GB News, so go and watch his interview. We're not going to play any clips here, but it was very good. And he looked at random sample of messages in the gender identity section of Childline's message board, which has over 15,000 posts. In a thread entitled Passing in Gender Expression, a young girl talks about wanting to pass as a boy by wearing different clothing. A response from another user tells the young girl that without cross-sex hormones, it will be nearly impossible to pass. So, immediately suggesting irreversible medical treatments as the only solution. In a thread entitled "My Period is Giving Me Major Gender Dysphoria," a clearly vulnerable 14-year-old girl describes a desire to start cross-sex hormones. Her parents are against the idea and presumably concerned about the potentially irreversible and detrimental impact of medication. Straight away, a trans guy advises the young girl to source and start cross-sex hormones without her parents' knowledge.
It's just unbelievable.
More grooming. In a thread entitled "Binder Finder," a young girl asks for advice about sourcing breast binders. She immediately receives multiple recommendations of the cheapest places to find them. Now, if you remember, this is why mermaids were investigated, because they were sending them through the post. So,
I mean, at least they're not sending them the hormones themselves.
no, but they're also not regulating on their own platform, their own website, which they take responsibility for moderating and have said they moderate, all of these interactions which are leading children to circumvent their parents' wishes and guidance and access chest binders and hormones. And I point all this out because James says at no point in any of the posts he consulted were these moderated. These could all be adults preying on children.
But the thing is, it's clear that Childline is being run by SJW Tumblrites.
Yeah, intersectional ideologues.
Yeah, they believe all of this stuff. And so for them, like saying, well, this wasn't moderated, and they're like, well, why would it be? This is the purpose of what we're doing.
Their advice and counselling service is called Ask Sam. And in this Spectator piece, James talks about having previously written about Ask Sam, where a Childline worker would respond to young people directly, not just crowdsourcing it. In one letter, a 14-year-old girl writes to say she hates her breasts. The response from Sam, who is a trained Childline worker, brings up the use of binders and doesn't warn her about medical ramifications. In another letter, a young girl struggling with gender dysphoria raises concerns about getting pregnant later in life if she were to medically transition. Sam's response mentions surgery and hormones as a potential choice, and then says you could have a surrogate mother carry the baby for you instead.
Oh, good solution. Just to be clear, right? When a teenager who is confused about the changes in their body, and I say this as a father, comes to you and says, I'm worried about X feature of my body, your obligation as an adult is to say, don't worry, it is totally normal. You'll understand, you'll get used to it.
Well, this is the watch and wait practice that before this madness was the means of redressing gender dysphoria in adolescence, and between 70 and 94% desisted across cultures. And
but also, fundamentally though, it's also going to be ultimately true. Your body probably is normal. It's probably widely understood, you know, like a common, whatever the child comes to with a complaint, it's probably just normal, complete normal. Just don't make them hate themselves. Try and reassure them.
Don't deliberately sterilize them and say you could circumvent your own sterilization later by commodifying another person. So we actually do have an interview with James on our website, which is free. If you pay us £5 a month, you can get all of our premium content and also ensure that we still have the budget to bring in excellent people like James, who's doing fantastic work. I spoke to him at the LGBT Alliance conference where I met Richie Herron and also did an interview with him. And Josh had a great conversation with him coming from the same psychological background. And he's doing great stuff. But I just want to say that reporting on this makes me really sad, actually, because I know someone relatively close to me had a very harrowing upbringing, probably would have benefited from social services taking more care, but they let them down. And if they consulted Childline's services, not only would they probably have not provided adequate enough care to save them from that situation, but this person also had gender dysphoria. And so they would have made that worse for them, and they probably wouldn't be the well-adjusted, lovely person they are today. Yeah. How many other kids are getting failed by this? Like, we should be able to trust our institutions that are meant to be representing the interests of vulnerable children. The fact that we can't just shows such a level of moral decay.
Yeah.
It's just harrowing. Like, and so I thought I'd bookend this as well with some updates on the Oxfam story that Callum covered yesterday.
Oh, yeah.
So Callum didn't play the clip because it was archived on YouTube, but Talk TV actually reposted the original video. I don't know if you've actually seen this yet beyond the screenshot.
I've seen the screenshot, but I haven't seen the video.
Okay, let's play the video, please.
Oh, look, there's J.K. Rowling.
Yes.
How are you marking Pride Month this year? While LGBTQIA plus people around the world are deprived of basic safety, not protected by laws, preyed on by hate groups online and offline, discriminated against at work, deprived of opportunities, and pushed to the margins. But pride can be found etched deeply in the hand of a friend, the hug of a chosen family member, or the safe spaces of a kind community. This Pride Month, we take pride in those who protect and champion safety for LGBTQIA plus people. We all must stand together with queer folks, online, at work, in schools, in sport, through laws, everywhere. We call to protect the pride. Are you with us?
So, again, protect the pride as if they are under existential threat.
Chosen family.
Yeah, your glitter family,
Yeah.
not your nuclear family that you've been pried away
Well,
from.
the family isn't something you choose. It's
No.
just at the end of the day, you were born into it. And you don't have a choice about that.
Yeah, and it shouldn't shock us, of course, but they've got the hairy-armed, androgynous women, they've got the mastectomy scars, they've got the communist fists.
Yeah, it's everything.
But the reason this generated more traction was, as covered yesterday by Callum, if we move to this next one, we've got the screenshot here of the comparison between J.K. Rowling and the demonic turf figure with the turf badge. Now, the update is, Oxfam took the video down. Go on to the next one, please. They've issued a statement saying we've removed the post because of concerns raised with us. We'll repost shortly. And they did repost the video. They've got a statement here that says that we're actually against all sorts of transphobia and things like that, but please don't sue us for defamation, JK.
Well, I just want to be clear. I don't think that JK has a case there, right? I mean,
Right.
I think that they're totally within their rights to caricature her as an evil demonic turf. That should be totally within the bounds of political conversation.
Yes, and I think it should be. I don't know if it is within British law.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, because of course the Maya Forstater case sets.
I'm
turf as a
giving
protected
my
characteristic.
opinion on how free speech should work.
Yes.
Whether that is the case or not is, of course, out of my hands. But yeah, I wouldn't have said she had a case there. I would have said, yeah, you can represent it with glowing eyes if you want. It's just not very nice. And honestly, J.K. Rowling's obviously not wrong about the question of what is a woman. So,
No.
you know,
No, being one, she might know. And then if
she
we go
might
on
have some experience.
Yeah, if we go on to the next one as well, this isn't a point of principle because they just reposted the same video just without that frame.
Right.
And so it shows that they're still committed to the mutilation of children.
Yeah.
Like that's
Oh,
not
yeah,
to
none
be
of the
understated
message, of
here.
course.
This isn't necessarily a win
Yeah.
because also the win is in the rubric of feminist of 2015 conquers over weird feminist that is also a man of 2023.
Yeah.
And it feels like that meme of the guys on the boat watching the two monkeys knife fight for
Yeah,
me.
yeah, yeah.
There's no
that's the
winners
thing.
coming out.
I bet J.K. Rowling doesn't disagree with anything that's in this thing, apart from the concept of trans.
Yes.
That's the thing.
Yeah. And we shouldn't be shocked at this because it turns out, if we go on to the next one, Oxfam's head of influencing, as James has pulled up, used to work at Stonewall.
Oh, there we go.
And he also used to work on a government board while
he
working
did.
at Stonewall. This is deeply entrenched ideological cultism that is ruining the lives of children. Now, this is all downstream of the UN AIDS agenda, which I've covered with Josh in this following segment, and I bring this up. Just go down, please, John. John, go down. Just scroll down the page, please, to the thumbnail. There we go. Fantastic. Thank you. This covered the 21 UN AIDS principles, which were put out on International Women's Day, which featured things like... Do you remember at the live event when you discussed the critical race theory essay that said it is institutional racism to not allow women to take crack while pregnant?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a right in there.
Oh, is it?
Yeah, that's actually...
The right to take crack
What's the
while pregnant?
segment? Your eyebrows will be shot off your head. One of the other rights in there is unfettered access to gender-affirming care, and also the ability for children to consent to sex. This is the UN. Yeah. Yeah, this might have flown under your radar.
Yeah, I
recommend
didn't see this.
You should have a look at this. And the reason I bring this up is because I mentioned in here that the UN staff were responsible for 60,000 rapes within 1 decade, right? And I'd like to draw a comparison because Oxfam worked for the UN, and Oxfam, if you remember in 2018, there was a giant scandal about all of the child prostitutes.
Yeah.
The oxymoron that
Yeah.
is because children cannot consent to sex in Haiti because they decided to go in with the Clinton Foundation and do some cleanup. And just a brief timeline of what happened. In February of 2018, Oxfam was accused of covering up an investigation into hiring sex workers for orgies. Sex workers, Guardian. Really? Child prostitutes, many of them, by staff working in Haiti after the 2020 earthquake. Oxfam was then hit with allegations that employees had used them in Chad in 2006 as well.
I was going to say, I knew that this had happened in Africa. I hadn't heard about a Haiti one.
Yes. The Charity Commission then launched a statutory inquiry into Oxfam amid concerns that it might not have fully and frankly disclosed all details about Haiti allegations. The charity's chief deputy executive, Penny Lawrence, resigned, saying she's desperately sorry. Later in February, Mark Goldring, the chief executive of Oxfam, claimed attacks are out of proportion to the level of culpability and accused critics of an anti-aid agenda.
I mean, I do have an anti-aid agenda, but
Out of proportion.
I don't think it's out of proportion.
It was just some child rapes on our watch, guys. It wasn't that many.
I mean, one is too many.
Disgusting. Yeah. And then, contradicting him, head of Oxfam International, Winnie Biamia, warned that what happened in Haiti is a stain on Oxfam that will shame us for years.
Yeah.
And then Golding, 2 months later, stood down as chief executive.
I mean,
he said,
it literally should never happen.
yeah. He
Like
said,
the first, sorry, but
No,
this is just, it drives me mental. It's like, well, there's going to be a stain on our reputation. It's like, yeah, you're going to be the child prostitute organization.
and now you're the
forever.
child mutilation organisation.
Yeah.
And we're still giving you money. I mean, the UN, do you know what their response was to all the rapes happening on their watch?
No.
Their first deflection was, well, they didn't use UN aid money to pay for the prostitutes, so it's not our problem.
Brilliant.
Right. You sent them out there to the country. They were on your orders. And they raped children.
You chose these people.
Yeah.
And the thing is, you get like the conspiracy side of, you know, these discussions going like, yeah, well, the pedophiles target these institutions to get into so they'll be exposed in these irresponsible ways. And it's like, okay, well, what do you do about that?
Well, Childline doesn't seem to have any safeguards against
Exactly. What do Oxfam have? Like, why do they?
that. Nothing, apparently.
They've got apparently sort of don't worry about it, bro.
Yeah. So Haiti have now blocked Oxfam operating in their country.
Well, they were,
Justifiable.
I mean, yeah, totally justifiably, but like, why hasn't Oxfam been dissolved?
Well, if we go to this final update, it turns out the Charity Commission might decide to maybe look into it.
Great.
But only
Finally.
because of J.K. Rowling's image in the video. Not because they are promoting the mutilation and sterilization of children. Not because they decided to do all this stuff in Haiti and Chad.
Yeah.
They're not looking into Childline yet for their unmoderated forums convincing women to use breast binders or chemical castration drugs. This whole charity sector is rotten to the core. We can't trust any of these institutions. And so God bless those like James Esses doing the Lord's work,
Yeah.
muckraking this stuff. If people like him were in charge, then I'd really put a lot more faith in these places. But the fact is, they deserve to be treated as the CIA once was described by JFK, to be scattered into 1,000 pieces and
Thrown
dissolved.
to the wind.
Yeah, exactly, because there can't be another Clubby Cole or Richie Heron. It's just too awful.
If you appreciated that segment from the podcast of the Lotus Eaters, you can go to lotuseaters.com to get access to all the premium content that's on the site, such as the Epoch series, this episode on Eleanor of Aquitaine. If you'd like to find out what else is being put out, you can follow on Getter at lotuseaters_com on Getter. Thank you and goodbye.